can
Yep.
help us there? Okay.
I'm getting your good side.
So we're going to kick off the newbie portion of this. I'm Johnny Walker, and I'm the president. All right, I'm up here way 6 feet away from you, so don't come talk to me, and I won't cough on you. So we got a huge ton of stuff up here for our raffle. So a day dance smoker, bee brush, hive tool. There is a XXX full bee suit. A pillow, a shirt, one of our Glory Bee books that our famous little writer wrote for us, and I think she walked out of the room. So if you haven't, go out and get you some raffle tickets, and at the end of the meeting, we'll pull some numbers and get some winners. Going to talk to Brazilian pepper is drawing to an end. Don't know if you've noticed it in your area, but around by me, it is all the little buds are starting to fall off, and the little green berries have started. So they'll be red before long. Am still seeing some goldenrod and a few other odds and ends, and the Spanish nettle don't seem like it'll quit this year. It seems like it's still put in a little bit. So other than that, some of the hives are acting like they're starting to get a little robby. If you don't have introducers on your hive, you may want to think about it. It sure makes it easier on your hives if you don't have a full open entrance. Those bees have to guard that whole area. You don't have to put it down to the smallest little space, but I sure would reduce it down. It makes it a lot easier on the bees to keep the intruders out. And they would definitely rob. They're a little bit on the lazy side when there's nothing going on. So we are going to have a bee weekend Saturday. We are going to have our facility open over here Saturday morning at 8:30. Jim is here somewhere. He'll be running it. Jim, stand back here. Him and probably Bobby will be there Saturday. I got an MRI for my shoulder, so I can't be there. I can only be in one place at a time, so I got to get that done. So they'll be taking care of that for me on Saturday, and they'll do a great job. And then Saturday, November the 13th, we will be extracting honey from our bee yard at our honey house. So if you haven't been out to the honey house to see us extract honey, you really need to come do that. It's pretty interesting. So we will start that Saturday morning at 8:30 because we will have to pull the honey supers off the hives, move them into the honey house. We will fire up the generator and extract the honey at the honey house. Then we'll take the honey supers out and let them rob them out in the field, and we'll bucket and barrel the honey up we get. And then Jim will be bringing the honey over from Great Bay that they pull off that morning. So we'll have, we're expecting about 10 from our yard. We're not sure from the other yard. So we'll do 10, 15, maybe 20 supers of honey. So, and then Jim will be doing Monday, November the 1st. He will have Great Bay's training day out there on that Monday. So, but he starts at about 10 o'clock. He's not an early bird, so 10 o'clock he gets going out there. So if you can't make it on Saturday to this Saturday, if you can make it out Monday to Jim's out by Great Bay, definitely do so. We have veils and gloves at both locations. I ask you to please wear closed-toed shoes. Try and stay away from dark colors. Don't wear big, tall, black socks. Don't wear black gloves. I would respectfully say don't wear black pants. Dark blue, any other colors seem to work okay, but the darker colors tend to get you a little more stung up. So it's a little bee friendlier. So long sleeve if you got them. We do have the veils, we do have the gloves. But closed toed, we do have some ants piles in our yard. You have to be careful where you stand. Other than that, that pretty well covers that, I believe. And like I said, I was going on about the honey super and the nectar going on, and it's slowing down. Unless some of you all have seen something different in your area. I know that even in our county, and our county is a really good county for honey draw, if there's any going on anywhere, generally. But some of the northern counties and some of the central counties, if there's not an orange blossom or something big going on, it really isn't all that. So, have any of y'all noticed anything or seen anything that, any of y'all having robbing issues?
I've seen some goldenrod.
You are seeing the goldenrod? Yeah.
I don't know if it's in my neighborhood, but I was driving down I-4 528 today.
If there's any around, they'll find it. And it makes a really neat smell. If your bees start working any goldenrod, you end up with a really neat smell of the smell of it in your honey. When you lift the lid off, you can generally tell it. It's got a neat
Good,
smell.
bad, or indifferent?
Huh?
Good, bad, or indifferent?
I like it. Usually don't get a whole lot, but it's a neat odor, a neat fragrance. Anybody got any questions? Like I said, robbing is the big thing right now. Yes, ma'am.
So I had a discussion with somebody whether we should use 2 brood boxes per time or 1 brood box and then start putting supers on top of 1 brood box. So what is the best practice? Is it best to have 2 brood boxes at one time or just 1?
All right, so she's asking a question about 2 brood boxes. If you've done any research online or bought any books and read anything about beekeeping, it will talk about 2 brood boxes. So they're talking about your bottom board, your screen bottom board, whatever is the start, and then a brood box, and then another brood box on top of that. And then generally, or possibly, you'll have a queen excluder and a honey super, however, how many honey supers you need. In Florida, we do not have the same brood cycle as they have up north. Our brood cycle in Florida in the spring starts out really good and then falls off. And then picks back up around May, June, and drops back off. And then picks back up here in the fall and drops back off. In your northern state, or your northern states on up from here, you'll have a lot longer winter. And then you'll have the pickup of the bloom, and you'll have really good, decent blooming stuff mostly through the summer, and then it'll fall off. So your queen has a lot more room and a lot more space to fill the bigger brood boxes. In Florida, what you'll usually find is your second brood box on top, or your bottom brood box, however they stack the honey. They'll come back and start packing a bunch of honey in it. And when you go to lift that first brood box off to check your bottom brood box off, you find out you've gotten weak. Or you think, this thing's glued down, and so you're wedging it, prying it, and you are, but it's, instead of it having like 65 pounds of honey, you got about 85, 90 pounds of honey in it. And it makes a big difference when you're picking that up out here. And so most people in Florida don't run the second brood box because of the weight and having to lift it on and off to check your brood down below. It's not saying you can't. You can run all brood boxes. Your honey boxes could be brood boxes. I talked to an older timer over in Orlando one time, and he runs all brood boxes for honey, for extracting and everything. And I said, man, don't you hate lifting? Because I pay people to do that. I don't care. Like, okay.
Tony, I'm going to remind them that our extractor only takes super frames. Putting brood frames in our extractor is a real pain.
So the club has an extractor, and if you're a member, you can borrow it to extract your own honey. But what he was just saying is it will only hold up to, well, it's hard to put brood frames in it. So it only holds the other ones. It is a radial type extractor. And what that means is the frames, the honey frames, the short ones, will go in there, and they go in like spokes on a bicycle wheel. And when you decap it and spin it like that, it slings the honey out real nice. To put the other frames in there, you have to put them in and turn them sideways. And if you have a really nice, big, thick, fat frame, and you spin it just a little too much, it blows everything out of the frame because the honey on the backside doesn't get out until you pull it out and turn it around again. So you have to keep stopping it, lifting them out, turning them around, lifting them out, turning them around. And it's
About
really easy
4 or 5
clean them
times.
out. Yeah. And then they're still not that clean when you sling them out. I'm taking direction, but I'm not really, yes, sir.
So, on one of my hives, I've got 30, 40, 50 bees that were, they're dead bees that are out in front of the hive. Is that, and only one hive is doing that. Could they be kicking drones out maybe, or do they get into
So do they
poison or
look
something?
like drones or?
I can't tell yet.
All right, so the guys are furry and the girls are not.
I didn't notice the smell of the hive. I did see like flies around. I don't know if they're just picking up on dead bees that are at the bottom, or if they smell something.
So what you can have, and I hope this isn't what it is, I don't want to be the Grim Reaper for you. But what can happen is your hive beetles, your hive could have got in a bad way, and the hive beetles start letting their larvae go, and pretty soon you'll have that nasty, once you smell it, you'll know what it is running out of there. It is honey, but it's got all kind of nastiness in it.
So the capped honey almost looked like it had like a green slime.
So if it's green looking honey, it's actually Brazilian pepper honey. So it can be just that and not anything else. But if there's a slime like on the wax cappings, it's like a like snot or
like a powdery mold type thing.
you have to open and look at it.
Slime.
Do you have a lot of bees in it or is there very few?
No, it's just a nuke. It's a real tiny.
So I mean it's kind of hard to tell without seeing
And then
pictures of it.
there were a few crawlers that I noticed too. Their wings looked fine, but they almost looked like they were being electrocuted, like they were.
Can be poison. They can get off and get into something where something's been sprayed.
It's probably acute, Israeli acute parasitic syndrome.
Oh, so now you're the
What
Grim
that
Reaper.
is, basically, it's a virus.
So it's just another one of those bad viruses that they
It's
get.
a virus that the mice carry. They look like drunk bees on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, they call them drunky bees.
But treating for Varroa and controlling them.
But go in and look for your queen, make sure you've got a queen, make sure your bees, they can survive that, but a lot of times they don't if it's a small hive. But if you got bees all on the ground dead and they're walking around drunky, yeah, so that is the might issue.
You'll have to open up and go inside and look for your queen and make sure you still have some brood. But the problem is at this point is when hive beetles can take over, wax moths will move in. They're all like buzzards on the side of the road is all they are.
Just wait.
But they will jump on the carcass whenever they get a chance. So I would get in there this weekend and check them and see if there's anything you can do.
Clean out the dead ones in the bottom of the hive.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to do is put a spacer in, if they, so they need to control their temperature. But if there's only like a 4 frames that they're using, cut a piece of cardboard, just cut it in, slide it in there, so they can control that temperature much better.
Okay.
Okay?
And if that other frame is nasty, don't have the 5th frame over there with just a divider between it. Take that one out, put it in the freezer, scrape it out, clean it up, and don't advance your problem.
Right.
Try and help them out. So they'd be better off with an empty frame that they've got to start and build anew than they would a nasty slimy mess.
Yeah.
So if there's any newer people here that are thinking about getting into beekeeping, it is quite a labor of love, and there is quite a few things that can cause problems with the bees. So, and that's one of the things we're always stressing on people coming out to the bee yard and learning. I tell people, for years I've told them, this is not like going to the pound and getting a dog or a cat and getting their, get them a new food bowl, get them a new water bowl, and you feed them once or twice a day, keep water in their bowl, and let them go out and go potty, and they're fine. Bees don't work like that. You're going to have to figure out what's going on with them at the time, and then every 2 to 3, 4 months, that changes, and you got to figure out now what's going on. Are they bringing honey in? Are they eating up all their honey? Is there no storage in there for them and they need food? You don't want your bees to starve to death. Do they have mites, or is the mite count getting high? That causes them to have viruses, and they all get sick and lethargic, and they'll die and go ahead and swarm out on you, and it just goes downhill from there. So I don't want to bust your bubbles, but it's a real tightrope to walk. Having a box of bees that's healthy is the neatest thing in the world to sit and watch when they're going and coming back in with all kinds of pollen, and they're dragging all kinds of honey in for you to have on your dinner table and your friends. It's a great experience, but you really kind of got to keep an eye on what you're doing. Yes, ma'am.
My neighbor told me to ask before I came here how to find somebody who sells wax. She wants to make some soap or something like that. She told me if I should find somebody in Pinellas who sells wax.
I don't think they're. This gentleman right here, Art. Because I was just going to say, I don't think there's anybody in Pinellas selling wax, so I'm glad to know Art's selling some. So what size blocks, bricks, or?
1 pound blocks.
Okay. All right. We do have a couple other people in the club that do sell like queens at different times of the year. We are getting to the time of the year where it's hard to get queens to do anything with your hives. So from right about now through March, you're out of luck. So when you go into your hives, be careful with the girls. You do not want to damage your queen. If you damage your queen this time of year and lose her, and they cannot raise up a new one on their own, you're in pretty bad trouble. Because that hive will not survive the winter without a queen. And you can't buy one because nobody's producing them. Even other states back off. So, and Florida's one of the better states for being south and being able to produce queens. So, if you can't swap frames and get a good frame in there and let them produce their own queen, you're in trouble. You will lose that hive. So when you're in your hive moving frames around, especially this time of year, be very careful, be very slow, be very methodical. Do not want to take a chance on crushing her. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
This is my first meeting. I'm about to complete a course called Heroes to Hives, which is a year-long course put on by Michigan State University. It's an online course for new beekeepers.
Okay.
But I have a piece of property in North Carolina, but I also live here. And I'm thinking about what's the difference between raising bees up there and raising bees here? What are the primary differences?
I can tell you what's like raising bees in Florida, but I've never raised them in the Carolinas, so you got me on that end of it. I think they do pretty well in the summer up there in the Carolinas, in areas. I mean, so it's like everything else. It's what's in the area. If you lived in a huge farming community where there is hundreds and thousands of acres of farmland, in the summertime there would be some crops that are blooming occasionally here and there where they'll get 3 or 4 weeks of something out of a crop. But then when it stops blooming, but if you live in a wooded area or like, believe it or not, here in Pinellas County with all the homes, we make a lot of honey because all these yards have ornamental trees and shrubs and plants of all kinds. And there are quite a few people out there that plant stuff for the pollinators, the butterflies, the bees, and all. So it's a real diverse area for having a lot of different draws of nectar for the bees. And so we're very fortunate there. But the Carolinas, I don't know. I would imagine the mite counts and all are probably the same with all that no matter where you are. I haven't heard anybody say it's any easier anywhere else. I do know you probably have a longer winter season to deal with. I generally tell people, and I've been doing this 15, 16 years, I had an old timer tell me when I first got into it that the worst part of winter for him was July and August. And I thought, this guy has been lighting a smoker a little too long. Because we don't have a lot of winter here in July and August. So after I got into beekeeping, I kind of figured out what he meant. So we don't have a winter time at all that slows our bees down very much. So a little in June, some cold weather. We'll have 3 or 4, 5, 7 days of blowing weather, some changing air, and a little difficult for them to get out and go. Normally through the winter, our bees are, you never see them locked down for more than about 5 to 7 days. And they'll be back out flying as soon as it warms up. If it gets up about the mid-50s, they're up going somewhere. Don't know where they always go. We do have red maple that blooms in January, and then at the end of that is willow. And I believe an invasive species around here, carrotwood, blooms around Christmas. So we have blooming stuff that goes through the winter that our bees can get out and putter with when it's warm enough for them. Whereas in the Carolinas, I think you probably have enough cooler weather that they would be a little more bound. But you keep food on them, and they can get through that. So if any of y'all just came in, we've got a huge pile of raffle stuff. If you haven't, you need to jump out there and get raffle tickets. We got a date ant smoker and some hive tools and some decappers, and there's a XXX suit out there with a veil, and it's a whole one-piece zip-up. It's the big daddy. Or if 2 of you want it, you have to kind of coordinate and work that thing with the right and the left. But, you know, you can probably do it. So if you haven't, run out and grab hive tools, because I'm fixing to be over and I'll be in trouble. But I got to take the break. And the book, are you signing books or, and we have our lovely writer,
Linda?
Miss Linda. She used to be our secretary, and she got sidetracked, and she wrote a book. And she will, if you purchase, do you have books out there for sale?
I do, I have right here.
Oh, so she has some books for sale. If you're interested in purchasing one of her books, she will sign it for you. So we got our own little book signing here. But she has one on the table, so it'll be raffled out too. I know I'm forgetting more stuff, but yes, sir.
It's important to provide a source of water for our bees.
So the county claim, or not the county, but the state recommends you do that on your list of things you say you'll do for the state. You don't have to get real fancy. If you have an air conditioner with that little drippy thing on the side of your house, take an old garbage can lid, turn it upside down there, and boom, you've got a water source. It doesn't have any chlorine in it. Your dog can drink from it. Doesn't cost you anything. Empty it out once in a while so don't get mosquitoes. But you do need to have a water source on your property. Generally, the closer you set it up to your hives, the less attention they'll pay to it. If your neighbor has a saltwater swimming pool, get friendly with your neighbor, because your bees are going to be visiting their pool more than you'll ever get to. For some reason, they really like those salt pools. But yeah. If you are a new beekeeper and you are planning on getting bees, when you get bees, the state of Florida would like to inspect them. I think it costs $10 or up to $5. Our local bee inspector is here. Would you stand up for a second, Miss Becky? Should I brag or complain? She was kind of a student of mine a bunch of years ago, and she has come and just passed me by miles. And she gets to play with bees every day now, being a state inspector. She is your friend. You want her to inspect your bees. Well, what they're inspecting is to make sure there's no foul brood or any other problems with them. She will become your friend. You'll have her phone number. If you have stupid questions, like I had lots of with my first inspector, you call her and she'll talk you off the roof and talk you through it. They're a huge asset to you. And it's $10 a year?
$10 for 1 to 5 hives.
So,
$20 for 6 to 40.
so I mean, most people start out with the first.
Yeah, probably.
So it's a huge asset. Definitely belong and get registered with them.
She was fine.
The other thing, The other thing you can do is join a local bee club. So if you haven't heard of any, I can introduce you to a couple, depending on where you live. We do have them in Hillsborough. There's one I heard local here in Pinellas. I think there's one up in Newport Richey, a small one, but they are around. And like I said, you really need to get to know your bees, get to know the beekeepers in your area. You can trade a lot of secrets and find out what's going on and what's not going on. It can be a huge asset to you, and it's not expensive. So at the beginning of the year, it costs $15 a year to belong to us. The biggest asset we have is it's got to be probably right now about a $1,400 extractor, electric honey extractor. You can borrow from us if you're a member, or save the $15 and buy your own honey extractor. I don't care. I am the president, Johnny Walker, and our vice president is running around. He's Todd, back by the back door. He's hiding, kind of trying to. And so if any of y'all have a niche towards secretarial stuff, we need a secretary for our club. So don't all of you look away at once. I wasn't pointing at any of you, but you look awful guilty. So if you are, or if you know someone that would be good, I mean, we'll train you. How hard can it be, right? Linda, how hard can it be? Never mind. Don't answer that. Never mind. We just throw the truth out there. It is interesting. It is a lot of hard work. I think it's
plan on writing a book.
It's so, yeah, you can't write a book. We're going to have some rules to this. Our treasurer is soon going to be leaving us, and we've got another treasurer in the wings, hopefully learning and coming on board with us. So I mentioned earlier, and some of y'all came in since then, because I can tell there's more people sitting in the front. The people that get here at first all sit in the back row. I think they're Baptist. So I'm going to go through a short list of stuff. So on Saturday morning at 8:30, behind the college here, we have a bee yard, and we will be putting on a little dog and pony show. We have veils, we have gloves. If you would like to come out, you do not have to be a member to come out. You can just come out. You do have to sign a waiver. Come out. Go through our little dog and pony show. We'll open up some hives, pull some frames out, look at some bees, look at drones, look at queens. No telling what all we'll see. Sometimes we find a swarm. Sometimes something's always going on. Always something new and different in the bee yard. But it'll be like that in your backyard too. So you can't ever expect the same every week when you go in them. So, but if you want to come out, just come on out. And I would suggest wearing closed-toed shoes. I would suggest, touch there, wear long pants. Long sleeve shirts optional. Most of our bees are pretty good. We have one hive that's a little, I would say funny, but they're not funny. So come on out to that. If you can't make it on Saturday at 8:30, Jim Lane back there is going to be Monday, November 1st at 10 a.m. at Great Bay. So we also have a bee yard out at Great Bay Distributors out by the Pinellas County landfill. That he will be doing the same thing, and he has hats and veils out there, and he'll be doing the same kind of show out there. So if you can't make it, or if you want to do double time, or whatever, that's another option. So we are looking for some splits. If you've got 2 or 3 hives at your place and you can't have any more, if you need to make a split, we will gladly take them off our hand and add them to our apiary. We're trying to raise our apiary numbers up. So if you want to donate a split or something to us, we will take them and get them into a bigger box and get them going. In the spring, hopefully, not right now. We will take them now, but whenever the splits or swarms, keep going.
Johnny, this young lady has a
I don't mean to pester. I just recently heard of Queen Weekend Cooking, and I am curious to know what the local community says about that, because you mentioned swarming, and
So what did you call it?
Like
Clipping the wings.
Clipping the wings.
Clipping the wings.
Is that a pro or?
So you can purchase a queen from a queen breeder, who knew, and you can order it with a clipped wing.
But you can do it yourself as well.
You
right?
can do it yourself. You can also kill your queen yourself.
Oh.
I would not, unless you have some decent experience messing with the queens, I would not clip wings this time of year through the winter, and I would not mark queens this time through the winter. They are amazingly resilient and durable, like a China doll. They are amazingly pretty tough, but they are very China-like. So, like I said earlier, if you damage or kill your queen now, it may be impossible to get one to get back in your hive. You may lose your hive. Yes.
Jamie's podcast this week has a question about that. Maybe talks about
That's what
it.
made me ask,
Okay.
because I had just heard about it.
So, and I will say also that sometimes a hive, in their discretion, will decide that a clipped wing queen is a deformed queen. And at any time the revolt can happen inside the hive and they decide she is deformed, they will kill her or kick her out and raise their own queen and start another queen.
So best practice is just to monitor the spacing in your hive before they swarm.
So if you're a beekeeper, not a beehaver, you're going into your hive every 2 to 3, 4 weeks. You're checking to see how much brood's in there, how much space you have. If you can keep a little bit of space on the sides and keep honey boxes on there where she's not packed out with honey, with a newer queen. Now, if your queen's 2 to 3 years old, you're going to have problems with swarming and you're going to have other issues. You need to have a fresh new queen in there. And generally, that will help.
If she's clipped, she can still fly. She won't fly very far. If she's going to swarm, she wants to swarm. You're not going to stop her by clipping.
Yeah. So
I
if they're
had
going
just heard about
if they're
it.
going to swarm, they're going to swarm, and it just won't be pretty. And if she can't go anywhere once she gets out of the hive, like from here a couple tables away, there's nowhere for her to make a home, and it doesn't get nice.
There's a positive to it too, though. I have a couple of beekeepers that do it religiously, and they swear that it really helps their yard because when they do swarm, they just pick that up and put it in a new box, and so they're able to
Get them
get
back.
this swarm. Yeah. But there are risks too.
So we will be extracting honey on the 13th of November. It's a Saturday morning. It's not our normal honey working day, our normal bee yard. We will be starting at 8:30 in the morning because we have to pull the boxes off the hives and then take them into the honey house, and then we will send them through the capping machine and knock the cappings off and then put them through the extractor and spin the honey out. It's a really neat process. If you haven't seen it, you need to come out and see it. We will be doing video, correct, Angela? Yep. And if you can, come out and see it. Yes, sir.
We lost our queen in our nukes, and we were told that we've got additional brood to put in, but we were told that it's more dangerous to let them make their own queen because it's more dangerous after hive rather than acquiring.
So when you order a queen, you're ordering it from a queen rare with marked drones and marked queens and known. When you raise your own like that, it's kind of a crapshoot. But this time of year, if you can't buy a queen, something's better than nothing. I would tell you though, if it does happen to you, you need to get an order in with a queen rare and get you a new queen just for the first of the year, whenever you get one. So.
This area is a hot area.
It can be. There is Africanized bees around the area. I don't think it's terrible bad, but there is a small percentage of them. We have run into them around.
Way better than the Southwest.
And when you find a hot hive, you know what they're talking about. No one has to send you a letter. We are planning on having a Christmas party December 4th. There will be more sign-ups and all on that. December 4th, we will be having a Christmas party, sorry. And so in the past, this has to be my favorite month of the year. We've had some really good times at our Christmas parties. There's always some great food, something about Southerners and food. always some great food and some great desserts. And I would say, Becky, every year we've probably had a good time had by all, right? Is there going to be a pinata show up or anything odd this year? Things like this have happened. So anyhow, put that on your notations. You put it on your calendar? So we're taking nominations for all board positions, and we will be voting next month. So if you have a nomination for somebody you would like,
I'd like to nominate Todd Truby for vice president.
okay? So we have one. Anybody else on the floor?
Who's writing that down? We don't have a secretary. Somebody needs to write that down.
You know, it's comments like that can get you the job. Do you have to go to the bathroom?
No.
Explain that one now.
All right, so we were getting this started about, this has been going about 5 years. Dee, about 5 years we've been doing this?
5 or 6.
So the year before that, we were a loose bunch of renegade beekeepers that didn't have a name. And we were wanting to make a club, so we started trying to figure it out, and we went for weeks and weeks, and actually probably months, working on trying to set up how the club would work, and it's annoying. And I came back from a bathroom break one night and found out I was the president. And so the bathroom break thing is, and I haven't gone to the bathroom since I've been one of these. I don't know what they'll do next. But like I said, we do need a secretary, treasurer, and now there's been a nomination for vice president.
Yes.
Tom, would you accept?
Yes.
Okay, so he is accepting. So wow, we may have a runoff this year. So I got going, and I never thought to, if I could get all y'all to stand so we can do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I just got going and lost track of where I was. So if you will, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. You may be seated. Dear Father, we thank you for this night. We ask you to be with us, bless us, as we learn about this little insect. That you to be with us and keep us safe in your name, amen. We also need did we appoint a fundraiser the other night or not? No, we can't. Okay, so we still need a fundraiser and an event coordinator. Event coordinator? So we need an event coordinator.
Bobby's the fundraiser. Bobby's the fundraiser.
No, you're not? Oh, wait a minute. Carl, where's Carl? Those two positions are appointed by the president, right? Check with Carl. I think that's the way this works. You're in trouble. You don't even have to go to the bathroom. Carl, so the treasurer or the fundraiser and event coordinator, those are appointed positions by the president, correct?
There's only 4 positions that are voted on: president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. That's our appointed positions by the president, having been approved by the board.
All right.
Makes up all the appointed people plus full officers.
Okay, thank you.
Point, Johnny, point.
Well, I gotta get the board to go along with it. We'll see who it is and see, get this taken care of right now. So next month's meeting, November. That's this, yeah, next month. So next month's meeting will be a week earlier than it normally is, because not a lot of y'all would come out after a big turkey dinner. So we will have it the week before. We didn't put the date on here, I don't think.
18th.
20.
20th of,
Meeting will be the 18th, the meeting will be the 20th.
what's the 13th? Or the November the 18th? So November the 18th will be our meeting next month in November. So, and then our day in the bee yard will be on the 13th when we extract the honey. We will not be going back in the bees that next weekend. So get out there on the 13th if you want to do any hands-on bee training. Alyssa, are you here in the room up there? Would you like to come forward and,
You wanna take like a 5-minute break so we can set up?
Oh, okay. All right, so on the spot, we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break so she can get her laptop all set up.
And raffle tickets are still.
And raffle tickets and all out there, because we got all this neat stuff. And then there's something else showed up on the box, and I'll have to find out what it is. So is that some frames? Super frames?
Yeah.
So it looks like the 6-inch black plastic. They look waxed.
Dipped in wax.
Dipped and waxed.
Bert, dip.
Is there 10 of them?
Yep.
Are you selling nooks or queens or anything? Bert? Maybe nooks. The spring, or you have any now? Okay. So the gentleman standing right in the center in the back, if any of y'all were interested in buying a nook, you might want to see him.
I've got nooks also.
And then Todd has nooks. Does anybody else own nooks?
Jim Lane.
Jim Lane, you have some? Okay. So used to, when I asked this question, you couldn't find anybody in Pinellas County that sells. You are still in Tampa, correct? But you guys are here local. Yes, sir.
I have buckets of Brazilian pepper for 200 right now, and also price of pepper is going up, so maybe raise the price.
So you selling that Brazilian pepper at a gas station that just goes up every week? Just asking for a friend.
Yeah. Chinese containers are up to 30,000 and coming back down, so I think there's an increase of the income because honey.
Actually, 200 for a 5-gallon bucket. 5-gallon bucket is 60 pounds of honey. So that's 61-pound bottles. So if you buy the bottles and do it yourself, you can get between $8 and $10 a bottle. Do the math. It's not a terrible bad price. But, so let's take a quick break. Run out and get your raffle tickets. And while we get set up here on the stage. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, John. We just needed a couple minutes to.
No, that's fine.
You need to put that down? You need to put that down?
No, just keep doing this.
They will. My 4-year-old, I read it to him, he says, "Tell me about bees."
I may have to buy some rabbits if
No. Mystery hunt. Good? Good, not bad.
Well, it comes from Hawaii, they make a little sugar there. I don't know, that's deep. Wow, that's very large. So maybe this is the one Paul said is Hawaiian honey. Oh. Oh. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, if you would, we'll go ahead and get this thing started. So over the years, we've grown a pretty neat, a neat relationship with mosquito control. They've gone long ways out of their ways to make beekeeping safer and easier in Pinellas. It's kind of a strange relationship because they're out there poisoning insects, which is a job they have to take care of so we can keep some really major diseases down. But they're really going out of their way to keep our bees and our bee stuff safe. And one of the biggest things you can do, and they'll talk about it, I'm sure, tonight, is get registered with them. They are not bee Nazis. They are really on our side. And I can't say this a lot about most government situations, but they are really helpful. And they will put your bee apiary on their map, and they go out of their way when they're fogging in the middle of the night and doing other things. They do go out of their way to make sure they're doing their best to keep your bees safe. So definitely comply and register with them separately. The state doesn't give them the information. They don't give the state information. They don't trade stuff around. You have to call and do your own thing and get with them. So you need to be a good beekeeper for your bees. Without a whole lot more said, I'm gonna go ahead and hand this over. And
Okay, thank you everybody. Just to introduce myself, my name is Alissa Berro and I'm with Pinellas County Mosquito Control. If you were attending meetings last year, you may have seen me over Zoom. This year, it's nice to see you all in person. So it's nice to meet you formally here. And like Johnny was saying, we've had a long relationship with you guys so far, and I intend to keep that up. It's been a great relationship, and we're always looking for ways that we can continue to work with you guys and make sure that we're doing the best we can to protect public health and pollinators. All right, so I'm going to explain a little bit about myself before we launch into everything, so you know a little bit about me. I am an entomologist. I've actually been an entomologist for 14 years now. I can't believe it. Time really flies by. I have worked in research, mostly in the government, but also at the university level. I've worked at University of Florida. I've worked for the USDA, both in the Agricultural Research Service and for APHIS. And here you can see me nerding out with a bunch of bugs of all different kinds. So, as he was saying, it seems a little weird that people who are in the business of killing bugs might actually enjoy bugs, but I assure you that is the case because mosquitoes, obviously, the reason we have to control it is for public health reasons, but overall, I absolutely love insects, and there's a lot of people on staff that are really interested in not only insects, but also beekeeping, as I'll talk about later, because we have a hive. All right. Okay, so a little bit of an outline of what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to start off with why is mosquito control important? Why are we doing it here in Florida and Pinellas County? Then I'm going to go over how do we do it and how are we mitigating risks for bees and other pollinators. Talk about future plans, and if we have some time, we'll go over some Q&A section. You can ask questions. But if there's not a lot of time for questions, I'm also going to put up my information, and you can always contact me if you ever have a question for us, okay? We're always here to help and answer questions. Okay, so let's start off with why do we need to control mosquitoes? So, a little bit of history on Florida. If you didn't know, all the way back when Florida was trying to become a state, a lot of people were actually trying to make Florida not a state because we were described as a quagmire of frogs and mosquitoes and generally swampy area. Really not an area that they wanted to incorporate into the United States. We obviously became a state, but we have a long history with having a lot of mosquitoes here in Florida. We have perfect habitat to breed mosquitoes because mosquitoes obviously need standing water. We got plenty of that. We get a wonderful rainy season, and unlike where I'm from, Michigan, where we have a whole winter season where insects actually have to go into diapause, which is their version of hibernation, down here, we breed mosquitoes year-round, all the time. It never ends. So, here in Florida, we have a lot of mosquitoes, and with that comes diseases. So, here in Florida, particularly, especially in Pinellas County, some of the diseases that we see the most are going to be Eastern equine encephalitis, St. Louis encephalitis, and West Nile. Additionally, we have all the mosquitoes that are able to transmit malaria and Zika and dengue. In fact, I think it was a little bit last year, but the year before, the Keys were actually having a local outbreak of dengue. You probably all know that in 2016, Florida was experiencing Zika outbreaks at that point. Lots of different diseases that can come from mosquitoes. And a little bit of fact, if you didn't know, malaria wasn't actually eradicated out of the US and Florida until 1952. That really wasn't that long ago. And a lot of this is due in part to controlling mosquitoes and actively controlling mosquitoes. So we are a mosquito control district. Almost every county in Florida has some version of mosquito control. Some areas have one person who goes around doing mosquito control for the entire county. Other areas have a more robust mosquito control program like we have here in Pinellas County. Now, something that I like to always tell the kids in terms of mosquitoes that they can go home and share with their family. We just talked about all these different diseases that mosquitoes can carry. Well, if you've been bit by a mosquito, you have been bit and you have survived the world's deadliest animal. So, you can share that with all your friends and family. So, of course, mosquitoes are the #1 deadliest animal in the world. And roughly half of those yearly deaths are due to malaria. So mosquitoes actually kill more people in one day than sharks have in 100 years. Mosquitoes, big deal. This is a little bit what I talked about here in Florida. We used to have a whole area of Florida that we actually called the malaria belt. That was all the way in the northern, through the panhandle, and all the way over to the east coast. We also experienced a lot of yellow fever epidemics here. There were yellow fever epidemics in Jacksonville and Fernandina Beach. In fact, Tampa area and Key West, Plant City, and Manatee also had yellow fever epidemics. And here in Pinellas County specifically, in 1962, we actually had a St. Louis encephalitis epidemic. And St. Louis encephalitis is still one of those diseases that we see popping up in our sentinel chickens. So what is our job for mosquito control? Our mosquito control district, our #1 job is to protect public health. But we also aim to try and control some nuisance mosquitoes because we obviously here in Pinellas County get a lot of tourists and we have great weather to be outdoors. So we do try and make it comfortable for people to come visit and for our citizens to be able to be outdoors a little more comfortably. Something to kind of put this in perspective is that we actually have 37 different species of mosquitoes here in Pinellas County. There's 80 different species in Florida in total. Out of the 37 different species here in Pinellas County, there's really only about 14 that we actually target. If you didn't know, mosquitoes are pretty diverse in terms of what they like to bite. We may think they all want to bite us, but that is not true. So we have mosquitoes that actually only bite frogs. We have mosquitoes that only bite snakes and other types of reptiles. We actually also have mosquitoes that only want to bite birds. So when we're talking about all those different types of mosquitoes, we have no interest in controlling those types of mosquitoes, and we don't actually target them. We focus on the mosquitoes that are vectors of diseases and those that are major nuisance issues, such as our salt marsh mosquitoes that we see really early in about April, May type time period. And how do we do this? I'm going to go through each of these different sections and tell you more about how we actually do this, but the major points I'm going to hit up are education, surveillance, and then treatment using integrated mosquito management. The #1 thing that I always want to talk about, and maybe I'm partial to it because I do a lot of education and outreach is one of the biggest and most key things about what we do. Here in Pinellas County, we're exceptionally urban, right? So we have a lot of urban areas here. We obviously have other areas that are more natural, but when it comes to the mosquitoes that we encounter the most, really the ones that we really encounter all the time are domestic breeding mosquitoes. These are ones that like to breed in the containers around your home. And when it's happening on people's private property, the biggest thing for us is that if we can get the word out to the citizens and let you know that dumping standing water and encouraging your neighbors to do the same and eliminating any areas where mosquitoes can breed around your home, that would cut down so many different mosquitoes. But of course, one of the challenges to that is really getting that information out to everybody. And that's why education is so important. We like to go out to schools. You can see on here, I do a preschool story time where we make mosquito crafts, all sorts of different events where we can educate the public. So, education is a really major part of this. Next, I'm going to talk about the importance of surveillance. So, the biggest part of surveillance is one of the things that the most major thing that guides all of our treatment decisions is knowing what's out there. So the basis of something called integrated pest management, which is utilizing several different kinds of control methods to be able to control a pest, the basis of that is knowing what your pest is and how much of a population you have. So that's where surveillance is key. We have traps throughout the entire county. Now, we have on this slide, you can see one trap that sits on the ground and another one that we have that's sitting on a shepherd's hook with a light. These traps both trap different kinds of mosquitoes. The one that's on the ground actually uses a lure. You can kind of see it. Let me see if I can see my cursor right there. That is a lure. And what that is supposed to mimic is the natural skin emanations from you. Essentially a person's bouquet, if you will. If you smell it in person, it smells kind of like dirty feet. So it's not super pleasant. The reason why we put that on there is because that's going to attract the mosquitoes that really like to bite people. And our major players in that are Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus, and those are our major players in terms of the mosquitoes that live around your home. So that's the main attractor on that. Additionally, you can see what looks like this paint bucket here, and you see that with both of those. In the paint bucket, we put CO2. We put dry ice, which is actually essentially CO2, and what that's doing is it's giving off CO2. We all breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, and that is the first thing that a mosquito is going to track to try and bite someone. They pick up on the CO2 before anything else, and they can actually pick up on breathing out CO2 from a football field away. So a really long distance. They're really good at detecting it. So that's why we use that trap. That particular trap is going to tell us which of those mosquitoes that like to bite people are in a particular area of the county. Additionally, the numbers will also give us a good idea of what the relative abundance is. The importance of tracking those mosquitoes, Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus, is those are particularly the mosquitoes that carry Zika and dengue. So it's really important to know our population levels of those because those are ones that we really want to make sure that we have a handle on. The other trap that you're looking at, this one up here, that has a light. So it's got, again, our bucket that's putting out CO2, attracting mosquitoes, but additionally it has a light. Now, if you've ever put on a porch light in the middle of the night and you've seen a bunch of insects flock to it, this is essentially the same idea. This is attracting mosquitoes based on not only the CO2 that will bring them in from afar, but then that little light will attract them even further. And this will bring in a lot of different mosquitoes. So now with this type of trap, we're looking at different kinds of mosquitoes like Culex mosquitoes or Anopheles mosquitoes. Anopheles mosquitoes are the ones that will carry malaria. And Culex mosquitoes are the ones that are typically what's going to be an issue for spreading things like West Nile and Triple E and St. Louis encephalitis. And with all this information, we're able to get an idea of how many mosquitoes that we're really interested in controlling are out there, where are they at, and are their populations rising? Are they something we need to look at and control? And that's the basis of all of our treatment, is knowing exactly what is out there and whether it's at a level that we need to control it. Something that you also may not know is for something like a fogging mission, a lot of people think that we just go out and fog and fog. I'll tell you a little more about fogging because it really is just a last treatment that we do as a spot treatment in the event that there are too many adults or in the case of a virus. But we even have legal criteria that we have to meet to be able to fog. We have to have a demonstrable increase in a population level compared to an average. So there's a lot that goes into surveillance and it's really important. The other part of surveillance that's really important is, if you didn't know, we have sentinel chickens throughout the entire county. We have 8 coops of chickens. And you may be wondering, why on earth are we keeping chickens in the county? Well, this is because those 3 major diseases that I talked about that are typically always here in Pinellas County and around the Tampa Bay area, that's the Triple E, St. Louis encephalitis, and West Nile, those particular diseases are actually diseases that go from mosquito to bird to mosquito. So we typically see these in our natural bird populations. Now, it's too difficult for us to go out there and start doing blood draws on wild birds. Not really an easy feat to tackle. So that's where the sentinel chickens come in. We have 8 coops placed throughout the county, and we do blood draws on these chickens every week, and then the blood is then tested for antibodies to those 3 particular diseases, and that alerts us early on in the process of knowing whether or not any of those diseases are cycling within our community. Once we see that, that is something that does trigger a fogging event, because it means that we have adult mosquitoes that are actively going out and transmitting this virus. Now, if that population of birds that has that gets infected is too much, that's when you start getting some of these mosquitoes that don't just like to bite birds, and that they like to bite birds and maybe bite some people and maybe bite some dogs. Those are the mosquitoes that will then bite those infected birds and potentially be able to infect people. So this is our early warning system, is having these sentinel chickens. Now, don't worry about the sentinel chickens, because chickens, although they produce antibodies to those 3 diseases, they don't actually get sick from it. So when you think about something like West Nile, blue jays, crows, raptors, those are all birds that get very ill and usually will end up dying from something like West Nile. Chickens don't experience the same. Once a chicken becomes positive for one of these diseases, we pull them out of the flock, we replace them, and then these chickens get happily rehomed and live out the rest of their chicken lives. So the sentinel chickens are very happy and don't experience illness. I always like to let people know that. So surveillance is the basis of everything we do in terms of determining a treatment. So now that we know how we're discovering what kinds of mosquitoes are out there, why we would target these certain mosquitoes, and how we know how many are out there, how do we actually treat them? So we have multiple ways to treat them, but the basis of all of our treatment is to actually target the larvae. So let's see here. I've gone over integrated pest management previously, but let's do this because this is the basis of our treatment program. IPM is a strategy that integrates multiple control methods to keep a pest population at an acceptable level while minimizing risk for human health, beneficial organisms, and the environment. What does that really mean? So when we're talking about multiple control methods, everybody can always come up with the idea of chemical control. But we also have things like biological control, which includes utilizing fish. You can have cultural control. That essentially means that we're destroying the habitat. So that's something like, think of dumping out standing water in your backyard. So we use multiple different methods to be able to tackle the issue of the pest, which in this case is, of course, our mosquitoes. One of the important things we always have to talk about with mosquitoes to even know how we're treating it is, what does their life cycle actually look like? Every single mosquito, doesn't matter what species or where in the world they live, they have to start in the water. So mosquitoes sometimes lay their eggs in the water. Other mosquitoes actually lay their eggs in areas that are prone to flooding, but not actually in the water. A lot of times those mosquitoes that lay their eggs in areas that are not actively covered with water, those eggs can actually last for like years, months to years. They can last a very long time. Mosquitoes are actually very amazing and very good at what they do. Once it reaches water, that's where you get larvae. Now, if you think of a butterfly's life cycle, you can think of larvae as the caterpillars. And their job in the water is that they're just eating and growing. And every insect during this stage has to molt. They're going to go through 4 different molts where they get bigger, because of course, as an insect, they have that exoskeleton. They have to shed that exoskeleton to get bigger. They can't do it without it. Finally, they get to, after those 4 stages, they get to be a pupa. And this is like a chrysalis of a butterfly, only mosquitoes are still in the water. So the pupa actually stays in the water, it doesn't eat, and it still needs to breathe oxygen. So you can see that this particular mosquito, this pupa, is coming up to the top, and this little thing right here is called a trumpet, and that's actually like a snorkel that they stick out of the water to get air. And if you look at our larvae, it looks like they're sticking their tails out of the water. That is a siphon. That's also their snorkel, but it's on the opposite end. It's not on the head. And I always like to tell children that they have a butt snorkel that they're able to breathe out of. All right. So once they get through the pupal stage, they're not eating at that stage, then they become the adults that we all know and hate. So why is this important that we're talking about their life cycle? It comes into play when we're talking about what is the best way to actually control mosquitoes in an environmentally friendly way, because that really is one of the bases of doing IPM. The main thing with mosquitoes is that we try and control them before they ever become adults. And why is that? Well, the adult stage spreads disease, it's a nuisance, but they also are much harder to target. An adult can fly in a lot of different areas, they're not congregated in one area, but the larvae, on the other hand, are in the water and they can't leave the water. They can't get out of the water in any way, so they're concentrated in those areas, so it's much easier to target them. Additionally, we have a lot more products that are specific to mosquitoes and that are a lot more environmentally friendly. So by controlling them as larvae, not only do we reduce the risk for people to become ill from mosquito-borne illnesses, but we also are able to do it in a way that's much better for the environment and better for pollinators. So what are some of the steps in treating mosquitoes? Number one, can we get rid of the breeding habitat or modify it so that mosquitoes can't breed? Now, we're not really talking about draining a swamp or doing things like that. Historically in Florida, we have done very large-scale methods to try and alter breeding habitat in the name of trying to get rid of mosquitoes. You can think of kind of the dikes and levee systems that are in coastal areas that are meant to control your salt marsh mosquitoes. We don't have those here, particularly in Pinellas County and in general in Florida. Most of those areas, they are now working to restore those marshes back to their normal habitat. So that is a way that Florida has done it in the past. That is not a way that they are doing it in the future. For us, you can really think more about that dumping standing water, fixing pool pumps. You wouldn't believe how many places here in Pinellas County where you have people who have a pump that goes down on their pool and eventually it just starts to breed mosquitoes. And then the last part is adding mosquito fish. Now I wish I took a picture of this, but we actually just had staff that got really excited about revamping our mosquito fish tanks. So we had a couple of mosquito fish tanks that were limping along and doing okay, but we had to do a lot of work to go back out into the environment, collect more mosquito fish, stock it. Well, they went over to Hillsborough County, which actually has a very good mosquito fish program. They do a lot of mosquito fish giveaways, and they looked at their tanks, they modeled ours after them, and we were able to revamp our mosquito fish tank. So we've always had mosquito fish, but now hopefully we're gonna have even more mosquito fish, which is very exciting. Now, let's talk about using larvicide to treat breeding. If you can't get rid of the water, instead we try and treat in the water. Now, of course, I talked about how mosquito populations are concentrated in one spot during the larval stage, and that's in the water, and this is when things are gonna be the most effective. When we're talking about larvicides, which on another slide I'm gonna go a little more detailed, this is where we're able to use things like BTI, which is Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis. That is a soil bacteria that's been isolated, and you may know it as mosquito dunks. So if you go to any big box store, you can get those donut-looking things or granules. The main ingredient, the active ingredient in that is BTI, and it's also one of the main ingredients that we use the most often. The great thing about BTI is that there are actually a lot of Bacillus thuringiensis strains, and this particular strain is specific to mosquitoes and black flies. Now the reason for that is because mosquitoes and black flies have an alkaline gut, so the pH of their gut is very unique compared to other animals and other insects, and as they're a larva, they're going to be eating and eating and eating. the BTI that's in the water, they're going to ingest it, and when it gets into that alkaline gut, it actually creates a crystalline structure, an endotoxin that actually mechanically rips them open and they die a terrible death. Yay! Right? So, BTI is one of the major active ingredients that we use. There's another one that's Bacillus sphaericus. This is along the same lines. Again, it's a soil bacteria. This one's actually even more specific because it really only controls certain genera of mosquitoes. So that one's even more specific to only certain mosquitoes that it controls. That one, I don't know that that's really available to homeowners, but the two of the most major products that we use are BTI and BS. Now, let's talk a little bit about adulticiding. For us, adulticiding is really only a target treatment if we get to the point where mosquito populations, the adults have emerged and now they're a problem. Of course, this all is based on surveillance. We've got our traps and we're checking to make sure that we know that that population is rising. We're checking what species of mosquito is it. Again, remember there's only about 14 species here that we actually really even pay attention to that we're worried about. That is where we start doing our ULV fogging, and that's the typical fogging trucks that you think of. Now, a fogging truck, what I mean by ULV is it means ultra low volume. So one of those fogging trucks only puts out about a shot glass over a football field of actual product. So it creates a very fine mist, and this very fine mist is what controls mosquitoes when it hits them on contact. Now, pulling no punches, with the larviciding, we have products that are able to control specifically mosquitoes, right? But adulticides, unfortunately, when you get to the level of adulticide, this is going to control almost any insect, depending on how big it is. The bigger the insect, you're going to need more than just the fine mist that we put out. But this is why it's a concern for bees and other pollinators. I'm going to talk in another slide, but this is one of the reasons why we not only have the list for you guys to participate in, but this is also one of the reasons why we only fog from 2 to 6 in the morning. So we fog from 2 to 6 in the morning because it is an active time for a lot of species of mosquitoes. It's not going to hit up all of them, but it does hit up a lot of the major mosquito species that we're looking to target. And the other thing is it misses a lot more pollinators during that time period. So for us to be able to find the best time period that we can, that's really the best window that we've got to do the best we can to target mosquitoes, but still avoid pollinators. All right, so let's go back to larviciding. How exactly do we larvicide? So we have a couple of different methods of larviciding. One of the ones that you may know is if you have had us come out to your house or your property, our technicians will do service requests. So if you have a mosquito issue, or if you want to be on our list that I'm going to talk about, we have 11 technicians who service the entire county, and each of them has a particular zone. When you call us with a mosquito issue, we actually come directly out to you, to your property, and we are inspecting for mosquitoes. They're going to do a couple of things. They're going to do what's called a landing rate count, where they literally try and make mosquitoes land on them and determine what species you have and let them bite them for a minute and count how many they have. Yeah, not fun. But so they do actually go out and do a landing rate count to try and get an idea of what are they looking for, because depending on the species of mosquito, that's going to tell them where should they be looking for the larvae, because their goal is to find out where are they breeding. Again, it always comes back to we're trying to treat the larvae as opposed to the adults. So they're going to try and figure out where those breeding habitats are. Sometimes it's going to be standing water around your home. Sometimes it might be something that's like a pond in the area or a catch basin. But regardless, they're going to try and figure out where that's at, and they're going to treat by hand. One of the other ways that we can larvicide is by our helicopter. I think some of you may have seen our helicopter before. The helicopter is a really important way for us to be able to treat. One of the biggest things that people get confused about with our helicopter is they think that we're adulticiding out of the helicopter. We never adulticide by air. We don't. We have a contract to be able to do it in the event that we had a terrible outbreak of a virus within our population. We have never had to use it, and we hope to never use it. So we never adulticide by air. The larviciding is done by air, though, with our helicopter. Now, the helicopter is used never over people's homes. It is only used in areas where we have large swampy areas or areas with standing water that we are able to try and treat because the technicians themselves can't get out there physically. So you can think of some of these areas like Brooker Creek will often be an area that we may have to treat by helicopter. Another way that we can treat with larviciding is you see this truck over here and you can see this little spray coming out. That's just a dye, it's not normally colored, but we can actually do BTI through that truck. So that's not actually an adulticiding truck, it's not a fogging truck, that's called an A1 mister, and that's actually pushing out larvicide to be able to treat, and those little droplets can get into a lot of different areas and travel a little bit to find standing water and then get rid of the mosquito breeding there. So, like I had said before, we've got BTI and BS, which are both our isolated soil bacteria that are specific only to mosquitoes and black flies. One more ingredient that's common for larviciding that we do use sometimes is called methoprene. Now, I talked about insects needing to go through those various stages before they get to a pupa. During that time period, an insect has a hormone called juvenile hormone that's going to keep them at that larval stage. And once that hormone drops, that's what's triggering them to go to the next stage and go through their metamorphosis and their life cycle. Methoprene is an analog to juvenile hormone, and essentially when it's placed in the water, that is just constantly telling the insect to stay at that particular life stage. So they continue to stay at that life stage until they're unable to survive any longer and they end up dying. Now, every insect does use juvenile hormone, but it depends on the amount that you use. So the amounts that we use for mosquito control, because if you've ever seen mosquito larvae, they're very tiny for the most part. The amount that we use is very small, and it's something that's not going to affect most insects. But when we're talking about how specific can we get to just targeting mosquitoes, that's really where we concentrate on trying to use BTI and BS, because those are going to be the most specific to mosquitoes that we can get. As another note I have on there that it's actually, methoprene is actually OMRI listed, which means that they can actually use it in organic farming. All right, so let's talk about adulticiding. Like I said before, adulticiding is only done based on surveillance, and it's only done as a targeted treatment. It is never our first go-to. It's really the last step in the process to be able to try and control mosquitoes. Fogging, of course, like I said, is only done from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., and that's so that we can avoid people and pollinators. I've gone over this when I talked about the helicopter. Do we ever aerially spray? No. We only do our adulticiding by truck. And what do we use? We have a couple of different things that we use. We use mostly pyrethroids, so that's permethrin, prolethrin, sumethrin, deltamethrin. Those are going to be the active ingredients that we typically use. And like I told you before and earlier, these are not specific to mosquitoes. When you get to the point of adulticide, none of it is going to be specific to one particular insect. It's usually going to be broad spectrum type of thing. So that's also why we try and minimize it.
Is it a contact or ingestion?
It's a contact. Yep, all of those are contact. Good question. Okay, so let's talk about our beehive list. So Johnny was talking about this a little bit earlier. He was talking about if you're a new beekeeper, what should you do? I'm going to add to the list that you should contact us and get on our list, okay? So I have our number up there. That's our mainline number. What does it mean to get on our list? This means that we are going to call or email you, depending on your preference, prior to any fogging in your area. It also includes our vegetation management if they're going to be using herbicide less than 500 feet from your hive. we will try and alert you, we will alert you if they're going to be doing that. And when we're fogging, we are going to give you a 100-foot buffer during fogging as long as there is no virus activity. When it comes to virus activity, we have to prioritize trying to get all the mosquitoes we can. So in that case, we're still going to contact you and let you know that we're doing it. So that way, if there's anything you feel that you want to do for your hive, you know in advance. But we do try and give that buffer if it's not a virus activity situation. Now, what do you need to do to be?
This must be a change, Alissa, because when I first registered with the state notified you, and in fact the first person who came out was one of your people to go and make sure I actually had bees.
Oh.
So I'm just surprised at this change. But do you not no longer have access to the state records?
I do not have access to the state records of who's a beekeeper. No, that's not something we know. So to be on our list, you do have to contact us, and we do want you to actually be registered with FDAX. So make sure you register with FDAX first, then call us out. You're going to call our main line, and we're going to set up a technician to come out. Now, what the technician is going to do is they're going to inspect your property. They're going to look for any issues with mosquitoes, and they're going to let you know where you might have issues with mosquitoes and how best to tackle that. Because that helps us out, but in the end, it also helps you guys out so that you're controlling mosquitoes. It's less of a chance that fogging even needs to happen. After the inspection, there's nothing else you have to do. Once we've done the inspection and we have your information, you're on our list. The only thing that's going to happen is that every single year, we're going to end up calling you and checking to make sure that you're still active, that you still have hives, and that the location is still correct. Something that you can do though is if you move hives and we haven't contacted you in a while, give us a call again and just let us know that you've changed areas. If you happen to change your phone number or email, do the same thing. Just contact us and we can update our list so that makes sure you're always in the loop. But yeah, like that point that was brought up, we don't actually have access to FDAX records, so we don't have a list of where all the beekeepers are. But what happens is once you're on the list, you're going to be on all of our maps, and we're going to be making sure to contact you prior to those treatments.
If I have more than one location, will you take care of all the locations?
Yes. If you have more than one location, let us know all of your locations, and that's going to be put in the system so that we have a record of all of your locations.
This also applies to city of safety, inside the city limits as well? Or?
Anywhere you're at, does not matter. So one of the things about mosquito control is a lot of things within the county is divided between what municipality you live in, and maybe the municipality takes care of something and maybe the county takes care of something. When it comes to mosquito control, we service all of the municipalities within the county, so it doesn't matter where you're at, we are your people. So, all right. So, let's talk a little bit about what's next. I started talking about this last year, so if you saw my talk last year, you might know that we started keeping bees, which is very exciting. Again, this comes back to, you might be wondering, why on earth is mosquito control keeping bees when they're in the business of trying to kill off insects? Again, like I said, we may be in the business of trying to protect public health and killing certain mosquitoes, but a lot of us are super interested in insects, we love insects, and we in fact really enjoy bees. So this actually started with one of our technicians is a beekeeper, so he decided that he thought it was a good idea to keep bees. We also thought it was a good idea, not only because we were interested in it and interested in insects, but the other thing that this does for our staff is that we get to see firsthand what it takes to be a beekeeper and what all goes into this, because it's quite a challenge. Let me tell you, I have reared a lot of insects for most of my career, and this has been one of the most challenging insects to rear, in a good way, because you constantly have to keep up with it. Things are always changing, variables are changing, what's blooming is changing, what's happening in your hive is changing. It's really, really interesting. The other thing that this does is when they see what goes into bees, and they connect a little bit more about what that takes, they can take that information and take that connection, and it plays into how they perform out in the field and what they think about. Also, our staff gets really creative and has a lot of great ideas. So the more that I can expose them to that information and educate them on that kind of stuff, the more that we may be able to come up with better ways to pair with you guys and better ways to take care of pollinators in general. So we have started keeping bees. You can see some pictures here. Some of these are actually old pictures because we have had some failed attempts where we have actually gotten a swarm and then that swarm has left us. But we do currently have one hive that's running pretty well. In fact, we just had Becky out here just, what was it, a week or two ago? Yeah.
Thriving, it's doing beautiful.
Yes, we're so excited. And it was great to have Becky out. So the other thing that Johnny talked about was keeping Becky's phone number. Let me second that because it was a fantastic experience. She's a wealth of knowledge. I learned a whole ton. I know the other two that were working with me that you can see in this picture down here, our entomologist Jason and of course Keith, who's the technician, who's the beekeeper. We learned a lot and we're super excited to continue. So we are keeping bees and it's been a really welcome challenge this past year or so here. What else are we doing? So the other thing that I talked about last time, which we've kind of started expanding on this, is we had put in some planters the last time I talked to you. And these particular planters, we have a couple of them, we have 3. One of them actually just includes things like herbs and peppers and things like that that are just fun to grow. But the other 2 include a lot of plants that are great for pollinators. So we did some research, and we have one box that focuses on plants that are native, that bloom at the end of summer and early fall. And we also have another box that's just in general good for pollinators. So the kinds of things that we have in there, you can see that we have some bee balm in there. We have rosenweed in there. We have blue curls. We've got over here, you can see blue porterweed. We've got tropical sage. What else? Yellow tops. We had aster for a while. We had liatris, which is the blazing star. We have a lot of different plants out in there that have attracted so many different pollinators. So I've seen our honeybees go and visit a lot of these flowers, but I've also seen a lot of native bees coming and visiting these flowers as well. So it's been really fantastic to see. I've even seen one orchid bee, which I actually didn't know we had orchid bees in this county until I saw that. But I saw an orchid bee. Very, very interesting. At first I was like, why is it moving like a hummingbird? What is that? Very cool to see it though. So these planters have been around for well over a year now and have been doing really well, and we're excited about them. And now we're in fact expanding on this. So surrounding our first building, we had a bunch of generic landscape plants that were planted a long time ago. And at this point, we're actually ripping them all out and we're replacing it with plants that are not only good for pollinators, but plants that are just native and good for wildlife in general. So we've got beautyberry, we've got necklace pod, we've got firebush, we've got coral honeysuckle, we've got a lot of gaillardia, which is the blanket flower, we've got scorpion tail, and in fact, we even migrated from not just around our building, but in our parking lot, we have islands of vegetation that we've also started planting with all of these wildflowers. This has also been a really great experience for our staff, not only to see what all these wildflowers are, but it's also a really good teaching tool for them to kind of understand what kinds of native flowers we have here, why they might be important, because you can connect it back to our pollinators and our beehive that we keep. The other thing to think about is, so we have had an incident of somebody spraying some of our wildflowers because they thought they were weeds that they had to control. And this is a really important thing to teach not only our staff, but a really good thing to teach the public about, is that we, of course, are the ones that determine what is a weed, right? A weed is just a plant that's in a place that we don't want it to be. And sometimes people look at a lot of these native flowers that can be a great resource and think that they're not something that's supposed to be there. And so having these wildflowers around and planted, it's a really good way to show staff, hey, these are wildflowers. And now we actually have little placards everywhere that we've put up that we're hoping to make permanent signs of that say something along the lines of, I'm a native wildflower, don't spray me. But we've been making a huge effort to start transforming our own facilities landscape to be more friendly for pollinators, because in the end, all of these small steps, it's a great way to start. It's something that we can do that can give back, and it's something that really helps teach our staff even more about what can we be doing, what they should be looking for out in the field to be able to help out pollinators and beekeepers.
Alissa,
Yes.
two things. About 2 years ago, I talked to you and we talked about having a meeting at your facility.
Yes,
That never got killed off by COVID, I believe.
it did.
But the second thing occurred to me, doing all your flowers here, you need a bee hotel. You know what a bee hotel is?
I actually, are you talking about the little straws made out of bamboo? We just put that up, and I'm pointing back to somebody who's part of my section who actually put that up. We do have a bee hotel that we just put up. That's a new addition. Yeah, that's a great addition to what we've been doing, so yes. But on the point of having everybody out, I got a lot of questions after the last talk about everybody being able to come out to the facility. I promise you I want you guys to come out to the facility and see what we're doing and see some of these changes that we're making, see our flowers, see our bees, do all of that stuff. We are still restricted by COVID right now, but as soon as we're able to, I really would actually like to invite the Pinellas Beekeepers Association to come on out, have an open house with us, and check out what we've been doing. Another chance to ask more questions and just see what we've been up to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question about, if you're an expert in the field, Bill Gates breaking mosquitoes. Do you have an opinion on that? And are they on the menu for Pinellas at some point?
I believe you're referring to the GMO mosquitoes that have come up in the news a lot. You're talking about maybe the mosquitoes that have been released down in the Keys right now? Okay, so the GMO mosquitoes, it's one of those things where we're constantly in mosquito control looking for a new tool in the toolbox. We are dealing with issues of insecticide resistance is a huge issue, and just finding ways to combat mosquitoes in general. So that is one of the avenues that a lot of people are looking at. Right now for Pinellas County, it's not even something that's on the table. So to understand that process a little more, what they're doing right now is the EPA is the governing body that's actually looking at whether or not they're going to approve for the release. So these mosquitoes are not actually approved to release anywhere. There are only 2 places in the United States that are allowed to release them, and it's only for data collection purposes right now. So that's the Keys Mosquito District down in the Florida Keys. And then the other one is over in Texas, and I want to say it's near Dallas. So those are the only 2 places in the United States that they're releasing on what's called a experimental use permit. So they have a limited amount of time, and they're looking at the data of what kind of population effects they see. So is it actually tanking the mosquito populations? Is it impacting the environment in the area? They're taking a lot of data. But honestly, it's just not really even at a point that we can even assess it. So here in Pinellas County, not on the table right now. It's not far enough in the process. All right, yeah?
Yeah, you done anything, is the county done anything on the long-term effects of children who back in the 60s used to ride their bikes?
Oh, yeah, asking for a friend?
I'm asking for a friend. We're doing that a lot with my brothers and sisters at now are going, oh, that's why I need to wear it.
I have not seen any data come out on that, but let me tell you, I've heard a lot of stories about that happening.
We're still alive. Hair growth and hair loss.
any questions, this is my contact information. Feel free to contact me. I'm always available to answer questions.
Some of the standard mosquitoes that bother us around our homes, what's the general, like, vicinity that they will fly in?
That is a really great question, and I'm actually really glad you brought that up. So when we're talking about Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus, our major mosquito offenders that are around your home and like to breed in containers, those particular mosquitoes will only fly about the distance of about 3 to 5 houses. So if you are having a mosquito issue at your house, and these mosquitoes, one of the ways that you're going to be able to tell is the pesky ankle biters. That's these guys. If you're getting bit around your ankles, they're not the greatest of flyers. They're going to be hovering around your ankles. That's where you're mostly going to get bit. Doesn't mean that you can't get bit anywhere else, but that's going to be the majority. You've got that happening. That means either you or somebody in a few houses around you is breeding mosquitoes. So that's one of the reasons why we always encourage people to talk with your neighbor. If you have a good relationship with your neighbor, try and talk with your neighbor and say, hey, I'm getting bit by mosquitoes. Are you? Check around your yard for any kind of standing water. And that actually jogs my memory. When we're talking about offering water to your bees, mosquitoes can typically go through their life cycle in the summer in about a week. So if you're offering water to your bees within your yard, that's going to be standing water. The best thing you can do is clean that out once a week. Dump that water and refill it. That's going to break that mosquito life cycle. So as long as you're doing that once a week, you're in good standing with us. Okay? All right.
I always thought that was. So the first time I heard them do their talk, it's been quite a few years ago, I heard that and I was just overwhelmed. And then the other thing I started thinking back on after that is, this is a large county. It's not very wide, but it's a really tall county. And so if they're trying to take care of mosquitoes that are only flying a few hundred yards, 300 or 400 yards, they can't spray the whole county for them. You know, the end of your street may not be having a problem. Your end of the street may. You may be the problem. Or your neighbor next door may have something out there that's a problem. Like I said, y'all can do a lot to help your own neighborhood by just some simple little things looking around. So you can be an asset to the neighborhood just by making sure that you're not causing a problem. I mean, it's not even the whole neighborhood, it could be just a few houses. So I thought that was interesting the first time I heard it. Because I was figuring, well, them little snot biting things are flying, you know, blocks or miles, you know, like bees. And they're not. They're going just basically a few houses. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to point out is next month, that is a month, that is a week early, in November, we have a special speaker. So Becky is going to be speaking next month, and her topic is going to be, because someone I think was talking or said something about Africanized bees or whatever in the area with the breeding and all. So she's going to be discussing this. So you got to come out and hear her razzle dazzle us. So I guarantee it will be informational and probably a little entertaining. So I'm looking forward to already, Becky. No pressure. She'll do great. She used to be my vice president. She's killer. And so she was learning to become a beekeeper at that time, and she wore me out. I like to think she became a really great beekeeper. Not all because of my training, but she had, I felt, some good starting training, and she has learned a whole lot, and she's done a whole lot in 5, 6 years. So she's come a long way. So you don't have to do this for 100 years to be good at it, because she's great at it. So you can obtain a lot of knowledge in 3, 4, 5 years. If you think you're getting into it in a year and learning all you need to learn, you need to stay home. You're not going to do it. Beekeepers are probably always learning something. So don't forget about Saturday morning, 8:30. We have our bee yard here at the campus. Monday morning at 10 out at Great Bay. PBA with Jim. Honey extraction next month on the 13th, that'll be before our meeting, so that's why I'm pushing it now. Around 8:30 in the morning, we'll pull honey supers and extract honey. We will do a recording and all that. Has anybody got any questions? Yes, Ms. Baker.
I have something I want to share, and I probably will not be happy with this when we hear you say this, but I wanted to let everybody know that Carl Lewis is moving, and I just want to say thank you, Carl. For some of you, you may not know him because he's that guy behind the scenes of PBA.
He was joking with us.
Since the very, very beginning, he's been wonderful, donated lots of his money, lots of his time. The only thing bad about him, he doesn't have bees yet. But he loves the bees more than probably all of us who do have bees. And I just want to say thank you, Carl, and wish you lots of luck. Thank you.
So before the COVID, he was always the face behind the desk. Now he's the face behind the mask behind the desk.
If I could just say about mentorship, Tony. Anybody, new people here who would like a mentor, please sign up on the sheet here. I'll pass this around. I have got a pen tonight, but somebody could pass me a pen and put it around here. I don't know if you want to sign up. I don't know you, but put your name down if you want. Oh, hang on. My wife found a pen. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to draw some numbers. And the first one we're going to draw is for honey bee pillow, or bee my honey. So the last four digits is 1788. 1788. Next is a t-shirt. It is 1627. 1627 the t-shirt. The next thing is a custom signed book. Glory be. 1703. You're very lucky. 1637? 1627. 1627. That's you? Yep.